Today, we're diving into a really fascinating puzzle. We have these incredibly smart, data-driven scientific tools designed to help us save the planet, but a lot of the time, they just end up sitting on a shelf gathering dust. So we're going to figure out why a technically perfect plan is often not nearly enough to protect the natural world.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at this perfect plan and why it's not working. Then we'll get into the real heart of the issue, these four conflicting ways of thinking, or rationalities. We'll see how science can clash with reality, and then we'll unpack a new collaborative way forward. Finally, we'll see what it really takes to make conservation work on the ground.
So, let's set the stage. The world has set this huge, ambitious, and really important goal to protect life on Earth. And to get there, scientists have built what seems like the perfect tool for the job. And this is the magic number, 30%. It's at the core of a massive global agreement. But what does it actually stand for?
Well, this is the famous 30 by 30 target. It's a promise that countries all over the world have made to protect and conserve at least a third of our planet's land and oceans by the year 2030. Now, that is a huge undertaking, and to pull it off, you need a seriously smart plan.
And this is it. Scientists call it spatial conservation prioritization, or SCP for short. Honestly, you can think of it like a super smart GPS for nature. It crunches all this complex data, where species live, the health of ecosystems, even economic costs. And it spits out a map of the absolute best places to protect to get the biggest bang for our buck.
And that brings us to our central mystery. If we have this powerful, logical, efficient tool that's designed to hit our global targets, why isn't it being used everywhere? Why do so many of these quote-unquote perfect plans fail to ever leave the lab and make a difference in the real world? Well, the answer has everything to do with the fact that decisions about land, about water, about resources, they're never just about the science. They're always about people, they're about money, and they're about power. And to get this, we have to understand something called rationality.
Now, that sounds a little academic, but it's actually pretty simple. Rationality is just the logic someone uses to make a choice. It's based on what they value most and what limits they're facing. But here's the catch. Not everyone has the same logic, because not everyone has the same values. And this is exactly where the friction starts. You have scientists who operate with a technical rationality. They just want the most effective, optimized plan based on the data. Then you have economists using economic rationality, trying to get the most efficient solution for the least cost. But then you have local communities using a social rationality. They're worried about their jobs, their rights, and fairness. And finally, you have governments working with a political rationality, trying to manage powerful interests and keep everyone on board. They're all being rational, but they're pulling in four totally different directions.
So what happens when these different rationalities collide? Well, you get this huge gap between a clean, perfect scientific model and the messy, complicated reality of human society.
You see, that powerful SCP tool we talked about, it's built almost entirely around just two of those rationalities, the technical and the economic. It is brilliant at finding the best and cheapest solution, but it basically ignores the social and political dimensions, which, out in the real world, are the things that actually decide if a plan lives or dies.
The best way to picture this is to imagine a brilliant architect who designs an incredible building. It's perfectly energy efficient, structurally sound, a true masterpiece of engineering. But they forgot to ask anyone what they wanted, so it has no bathrooms and no windows. Would anyone actually use it? No way. That's kind of what happens when conservation plans are designed without thinking about the people.
And look, this isn't just a hunch. The data is pretty staggering. A huge review of almost 2,500 scientific conservation studies found that 94% of them completely ignored the social side of things. Only a tiny 6% even tried to factor in the human dimension. That's a massive blind spot. So here's the fallout. When scientists develop a perfect plan in a vacuum and then hand it down from on high, it doesn't feel like a helpful suggestion. To the local people and politicians on the ground, it feels like an outsider trying to grab power and tell them what to do, and the most natural human reaction to that is to push back.
Okay, so how do we fix this giant disconnect? Well, the solution isn't to throw out the science, not at all. The answer is to embed that powerful science into a totally new process, one that's built on collaboration from the very beginning.
First, let's just remember the old way. It's a straight line, a very top-down process. Scientists gather data, set the goals, pick the spots,
and then hand the plan off to be implemented. You can see how the people actually affected by the plan don't really show up until the very end, if they show up at all.
Okay, now look at this. This new framework completely flips the script. Every single step is woven together with collaboration. You start by compiling data not just on biodiversity, but on what people need and want. The goals are co-defined, new areas are chosen through co-design, and the engagement isn't just one meeting, it's continuous. The scientists become facilitators and partners, not just top-down experts.
And let's be clear, this isn't just about making people feel good. This is about being radically more effective. When you actually bridge that gap between the scientific plan and the social reality, you get real, tangible benefits that make conservation actually stick.
Think about it. When people are part of the process from the start, you build trust. They feel a sense of ownership over the project. That makes the whole plan feel more legitimate, which drastically reduces the chances of conflict down the road. You avoid all those hidden costs of failed plans that have to be scrapped. What you get in the end is a solution that is way more resilient and built to last.
Now, it's true, this approach isn't the easy way. It absolutely takes more time and more resources right at the beginning. There are more meetings, more conversations, more negotiations. But all that upfront investment is what lays a solid foundation for a project that won't just collapse under pressure later on.
And the really cool part is that technology can actually help us with this more human-centered approach. Advances in things like AI and machine learning are making it possible to run different scenarios super quickly, showing everyone involved the real-world trade-offs of their choices. It can make these collaborative tools faster and easier for everyone to use.
So this leaves us with a final big question. Our scientific tools, our data, our models, they're more powerful than they have ever been. But maybe, just maybe, the most important thing we can do to protect the planet isn't to build a better algorithm. Maybe it's for science to learn how to come to the table, not just to talk, but to truly listen.